Okay, excuse me, sorry. So we're going to read paragraph 4 now. Sir, by authority of Brigadier General Beauregard, commanding the Provisional Forces of the Confederate States, we have the honor to notify you that he will open the fire of his batteries on Fort Sumner in 1 hour from this time. We have the honor to be very respectfully your obedient servants, James Chestnut, Jr., Aide-de-Camp, Stephen D. Lee, Captain, Army Aide-de-Camp. Okay, so this was a short paragraph. I think, how would you sum this one up? Yeah, so I would just say the Confederate troops are letting the Union troops know they will be fired upon, right? He's basically saying, commanding the Provisional Forces of the Confederate States, we will have the honor to notify you that he will open fire of his batteries on Fort Sumner in 1 hour from this time. And so he's basically, he's giving them an hour notice, right? So he's letting them know, kind of shows that there's a little gentlemanliness between the two sides, but they're still going to fire upon the fort, right? All right, so let's go to our 5th paragraph here. The above note was written in one of the casemates of the fort in the presence of Major Anderson and several of his officers. On receiving it, he was much affected. He seemed to realize the full import of the consequences and the great responsibility of his position. Escorting us to the boat and wharf, he cordially pressed our hands in a farewell, remarking, "If we never meet in this world again, God may grant that we meet in the next." So let's underline the second sentence. On receiving it, he was much affected. He seemed to realize the full import of the consequences and the great responsibility of his position. Okay, so what does this tell you, the second line, where he's saying he received it, was much affected. He seemed to realize the full import of the consequences. Full import of his consequences. So basically, he kind of sees, he understands what's going to happen. He sees that the Confederates, that this war is about to start. They're about to fire on the fort, and he knew exactly what was going on. So what do you think this 5th statement should be? So I think we should write, the Confederate general bids the men farewell, knowing that the importance of what's going to happen. Yeah, so basically Major Anderson, he understands the Confederate general. He understands what's going to happen. He knows that the second he leaves, and that once they fire upon this fort, they kind of realize what's going on. At this time, we talked about a lot of the tensions were heightening up, right? We talked about the debate over slavery, the debate over the territories, and the North and South didn't necessarily like each other this time. So they knew that if one side fired upon the other, this was kind of basically going to start the war, right? Because we talked about a lot of states had already seceded at that point. And do you remember what seceded means? Yes, it means to leave, right? So we talked about how they seceded. And so, like I said, for the 5th day, we're just going to write about how you knowing farewell, bid farewell, knowing the importance of what's going to happen. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit just because there's 6, 7, 8, 9, just for the sake of time. We're just going to ask these last 4 questions. So I had, was either side excited about going to war with each other? So we're just going to finish with these last few questions at the end. So the last 5 questions we have, the first one is, was either side excited about going to war with each other? And I think it's pretty clear that we have examples from both sides that they were not excited about going to war. So, talked about in paragraph 2, they said, Major Anderson will state the time which he indicated by him. He will evacuate and agree that in the meantime he will not use his guns against us unless ours should be employed against Fort Sumner. You are authorized us to avoid a fusion of blood. We basically talked about, how we know that both sides aren't excited about going to war. They kind of know what this is going to mean, right? And so now we have question 2, which is, did the Union soldiers surrender? As we know, the Union soldiers did not surrender. If we continue to read 6, 7, and 8, we'll see that this leads to question 3, which is which side fired the first shot, and it was the Confederates who fired the first shot upon the Union. So that answers 2 and 3, so the Union did not surrender, and the Confederates were the ones who fired the first shot. So we're going to say, find a sentence that showed the author was present at the event. So we have, first of all, we have in the intro where it says Stephen D. Lee wrote of his experience after the war. And the second line in paragraph 1, at 4:30 p.m., he handed us his reply. He handed us, obviously that shows first person, refusing to accede to the demand. So that's just one of the examples we have throughout the reading to show that Major Anderson was there, right? And so from that point on, we're going to move over to our video questions. So we're going to take out our crash course video questions. We're going to hand in this paper, so I guess we can hand in the paper for today. So on the front, we have a Kim chart, which is, I'll do this would be done in a different lesson, but a Kim chart, I really like it. It has the key vocabulary terms, it has the information, the definition. and then a memory clue. And so basically you write the word for the K, and then you would write the actual definition for the I, but the memory clue is where I like it, especially for differentiation for students. So a memory clue, I always tell them, can be literally anything they want. So it could be a song, it could be a video, it could be a picture, it could be a sentence, it could be a book title, it could be anything that helps them remember. So I really like this because I think it puts the power in the students to remember what they were, what's going to help them remember this specific topic. Excuse me, so we're going to, normally I would key up the crash course video up here on the top, and then so I just have their questions. This is more of a review from a lesson or two we'd be doing before. So the first question we have is, why were Northerners so shocked by the Fugitive Slave Act? Why did Stephen Douglas push the Kansas-Nebraska Act? How did the Kansas-Nebraska Act clash with the Missouri Compromise? What party was created from the Kansas-Nebraska Act? Why was slavery so bad for the economy in the territories? Why did the fighting break out between pro-slavery and anti-slavery sides in Kansas? Was slavery overrepresented in the government? What was the underlying ruling of the Dred Scott? So normally when I do these kinds of videos, I play the video and I stop throughout. So I don't just play it and then have them do the questions at the end. I play it and then I stop and I ask questions. I kind of get a discussion going, so they're not just sitting there droning off and not necessarily paying attention to the video. I like to make sure that they're kind of keep them on their toes and ask them questions, and then check that they're paying attention. And I always collect these kinds of classworks as well, because it's really important and imperative to make sure the students are paying attention, even if it's just a video, but the video itself has a lot of important information for them. So, like I said, I really find these crash course videos very helpful. They really summarize a lot of things we talk about in our lessons. So overall, this is just, I think, a really great lesson just to kind of build their knowledge, especially when we're talking about primary sources, and we're talking about Fort Sumter, we're talking about how the Civil War started, and this is a really good intro lesson to talk about the Civil War in general. It's good for them to have this kind of background and understand the actual individual players who had a pivotal role to play. Stephen D. Lee, it's General Beauregard. It's important to know these people to an extent. Obviously, you don't have to memorize their names, but it's important to just kind of have an idea of how the events in American history took place from that first-person perspective, to see how the people who were involved really felt about those actions. So overall, I just want to thank you guys again for giving me the opportunity to interview, and I hope I did a good job with this. This is my first time ever recording this kind of video for a lesson, so I'll send this over, and thank you very much.